Hello,
Hello.
hello, everyone. Jacob and I are both really excited to open together today, apparently.
It feels like more crowded because we're starting here with two people in this space as opposed to three, even though our guest is here, and we'll bring her square in like Hollywood squares in just a moment. But yeah, it's extra crowded. I'm very excited, Sarah.
Oh, yeah, I love the little Hollywood Squares reference. It always makes me think of like RuPaul's Drag Race or something and like the original Hollywood Squares. Anyways, welcome everybody to episode 9 of Liberal Arts MBA, living and working artfully. I know, right?
Number nine.
Guys, our first season is going to be 12 episodes, actually. So we're like almost to the end of season 1.
Yeah, we're in the final quarter, folks.
Final quarter, like the final countdown, but not. I am one of your co-hosts, Sarah Sands. I'm coming to you live from Houston, Texas today. And today, in terms of living and working artfully, I have created a graphic this morning in line with the ethos of Charlinda Brewster, who is a graphic designer and illustrator that we can't wait to introduce you to. But I've created a graphic this morning, and that is my success of the day.
That's awesome. And in line with living and working artfully, I have cleaned up. We've been doing a lot of cleaning in our office that I share with my wife. We both work from home. So we've been able to create more space to live and work artfully. So I want to add in Char. She's back here. Charlinda.
Hi, guys.
Guys, this is Charlinda Brewster. Charlinda, where do we have you dialed in from today?
Yeah, good question, because I don't even know where I am half the time. Portland, Oregon.
Shout out to us. We are covering the continental US at this point. We've had New York, we've had Texas, we've now got Sharon from Oregon. We've also covered Zurich, Switzerland, and we've covered London, or nope, Justin's not in London. He's outside of it on the west side, I believe. But we are going global with this, which is super exciting. And Shar, you're in the midst of your crazy busy travel season. Where are you off to next?
Yeah, if anything, it's kind of almost coming to an end. But yeah, this week I'm doing something super exotic, like camping, and then I'll be in New York for the first week of September. So
this is the camping thing. It's exactly what people think of when they think of Northwest United States, and you're really bringing that vibe for us.
Yep.
I'm in Austin, and people always say that Austin and Portland are like spiritual sister cities. They're very similar in terms of having kind of this dual ethos of art and business, and being inviting to people from elsewhere to come to these locations to move in and settle down or just live.
Yeah, lots of young families and stuff like that.
So this is episode 9, as Jacob and I were saying, and per usual, we thank you, our brilliant community, for joining us today, wherever you're joining. Today we are going live from my LinkedIn account, but y'all, if you haven't connected with us, with Jacob or with me or with Liberal Arts MBA on LinkedIn, please do so. We're trying to be able to stream live from Liberal Arts MBA LinkedIn account next season. So like us, follow us there. Some of you are also coming to us live from Facebook, Liberal Arts MBA. Some of you may have found out about this through Twitter or through Instagram, both Liberal Arts MBA accounts. So, be the good millennial that we know all of you can be, and follow us, like us, subscribe to us on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, wherever you happen to be in the digital space. Join us there. And we also have a community engagement survey that we are asking people to do. It'll take you 3 minutes. And our goal is that, we are growing. We want to bring more brilliant people onto the show and support everyone in their college to career, education to business journeys. So please take our 3-minute survey and let us know how we can continue to support you in this space. Jacob, did I miss anything there?
I just wanted to add, you didn't miss anything. You hit all the excellent points and all of our wonderful social assets that are out there. But I just wanted to add, if this episode we're talking to Charlinda, and where, you know, her experience as an artist and somebody who's lived in New York and living in Portland is something that resonates with you, or really more importantly, a friend or someone else that like, you should listen to this story, you should like connect, please share the individual episodes. One of the benefits of having it on YouTube and having it on Facebook is there's multiple versions of these links. So it is very shareable at this point. And that goes for our previous 8 episodes, the next 3 episodes, and all the years moving forward. Because like, we bring these guests together and we want to hear from them and learn from them, but we do this as a live show because there are other people out there who we know will get something like richer than is totally being put down. And so that's all I want to add. Charlinda, do you want to add anything?
Well, no, just like I was like, what do I have to contribute? Just hopefully
I don't know why I wanted to put
story does connect with someone.
We want the
it
input of
does.
our
Please
guests.
reach out to me because I want to know and hear, and maybe we can support each other. So
Yes, that's such a good point that Charlinda just brought up. Is that, you know, Jacob and I will speak for all of our guests now, which is that please connect with our guests. They're brilliant. They're doing wonderful things. Charlinda is, as we'll talk about, a wonderful artist and has work all over the internet for you to consume, but also join in that creation process, which we'll talk more about. So to get us there, let me give you a brief little history of Charlinda. So Charlinda Brewster is a graphic designer and illustrator, an all-around wonderful human being with over 8 years of experience in branding and logo and print design. And I'm making this face because I know nothing about graphic design except from what Charlinda teaches me. She's also an illustrator. She has a degree in graphic design from the University of Wisconsin-Stout. And she is a freelance designer and illustrator that has studied both language and design in Mexico, Finland, and Germany, bringing quite the worldly view to our art. Her art, and also as an illustrator, just inspires me to think about all the ways that I can center #BlackGirlMagic and the Black and Brown experience in this country through art, which is something that Charlinda always inspires me to think about when I engage with any of her pieces. So welcome, Charlinda, officially to the show. Did I get your bio right? Did I cover all the pieces?
yeah.
And so on that note, as we do every week, Jacob and I bring a little bit of liberal arts and a little bit of MBA to the show, and we ask our guests to join us in exploring these topics before we get into the nitty-gritty of their story. And so this week, Jacob is going to kick us off with a bit of the liberal arts.
All right, so I get to do the liberal arts nugget this week, and I'm pretty excited about it. I actually switched the quote that Sarah and I told her I was going to use from our production meeting. And so it's a quote here from Toni Morrison in an essay she wrote for The Nation magazine, actually just back in 2015. And the essay, or the title of this piece, was "No Place for Self-Pity, No Room for Fear." And so I just want to take this quote that comes from towards the end, and there's a slightly larger context here that I wanted to put out. Well, I'll start with that, which was I had read this back in 2015, and I actually thought that this quote was something she had said decades ago. Or at least the original context was right after the second inauguration, or right before the second inauguration of the George W. Bush administration. But actually, this was written and came to light in 2015. She was just in the essay talking about where this idea came from, and it was a conversation she had with a friend in 2013. And so this is a quote. "This is precisely the time when artists go to work. There is no time for despair, no place for self-pity, no need for silence, no room for fear. We speak, we write, we do language. That is how civilizations heal. I know the world is bruised and bleeding, and though it is important not to ignore its pain, it is also critical to refuse to succumb to its malevolence. Like failure, chaos contains information that can only lead to knowledge, even wisdom, like art." So I love that quote. I mean, it's we're talking with an artist here today, so that was one of the first things, is like the artists are the healers of civilization. I took a Toni Morrison class when I was in college. I was an English major, and that was like the capstone of the English curriculum. You had to take one class that was very focused. And I was lucky our professor was part of the Toni Morrison Society, and she had met Toni Morrison a few times. So it was just like, it was all Toni Morrison. It was kind of a weird spot for like a white Jewish guy from Texas to find himself, but it was like some of the deepest and richest art that's ever affected me.
One would say that it is the most important place for a white Jewish guy from Texas to find himself is in a Toni Morrison class, frankly. Shar, what does that quote bring up for you?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
What is the Toni Morrison quote bring up for you?
Oh, for me, I mean, yeah, it kind of just touched on everything that I feel. It's just like knowing that there's so much going on and it's very overwhelming, but like the healing does have to kind of begin, and how you kind of go about it is up to you. But for me, yeah, it's usually creatively that I try to express that healing. So
yeah.
Do you feel a responsibility as an artist to provide healing through art?
I wouldn't say it's a responsibility, because in a way it's just kind of therapeutic personally for me. So it's more of me putting a little bit of me out there of how I'm trying to heal, and hopefully that resonates with someone else, and we become this community or support, or it then impacts them or motivates them to kind of continue healing in their community, in their life, in their space.
Yeah, I read, I'm trying to remember now whether it was Song of Solomon or The Bluest Eye. I think it was The Bluest Eye, in a magical realism class that I took in college. I'm reading The Bluest Eye, and what I felt was very much a process of like family healing that comes out in that story, and coping with tragedy in the past. For me, what it enabled me to do was actually, just as you're talking about, Charlinda, I was also in a creative writing class at the time, and it allowed me to explore my own trauma and my own healing. I've spoken about this not on the show, but I am a sexual assault survivor, and so being able to see the way that she worked her art in order to make sense of nonsensical experiences felt like it gave me permission to do the same. And there was this sort of like community in that sense of like communing together as artists to heal together through shared but separate trauma, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think it does. Like, I think quite often in this world, we can feel alone in that we're the only ones like maybe dealing with a certain situation. And granted, everyone's circumstances, like no one has the exact same story, but we're not alone at all in how we're feeling. So like for me, like I said, it's kind of like a therapeutic thing. So any way I can then kind of open that door to make sure someone doesn't feel alone is like great. And I think, yeah. And however you do it, through art, music, and whatever.
Holler. Well, speaking of however ways you do it, so this MBA quote that I found, I did not know the quote that Jacob was going to use until now, and it's interesting to me how much we were separate and together on the same page. So this quote comes from Elizabeth Cutler. The Wall Street Journal asked her to give some thoughts on faith. Elizabeth Cutler is the co-founder and a former CEO of SoulCycle and a co-founder of Life Shop, which like anyone who knows me knows that I think SoulCycle is like the place where souls go to die a little bit. Sorry for anyone who loves it out there. But she said this really brilliant thing, and it really spoke to me because the quote came out in the March 3rd, 2020 edition, right before the pandemic started. And so she's talking about faith. She said, "Faith is about connection. That connection to the people in my life, to humanity, to nature, to universal energy. All of us feel that our faith in humanity is strongest when we're connected to the humans around us. Community is tapping into something. It's people who commit to a certain set of agreements. We create safe spaces for people to be able to experience what they need to experience." And she was talking about this in the context of a workout class, which I think is like kind of hilarious. Although as a kickboxing fanatic, I did actually feel that in that particular space. But it crossed me, I never thought about like working out in a community as the same as how I feel about art and the faith that I am restored to in humanity when I am communing with people in the art that they've created, whether I'm in like literally the same room with them or not. And I think that that process of like finding ways in which like the business world thinks about the human connection in the way that artists do is actually like really powerful and could humanize business in a way that we don't usually think about or talk about, but really need to be centering. So that's how this quote spoke to me at this particular moment.
What do you think about this, Charlinda?
Yeah, it's hard because knowing that it relates to a workout class kind of cracks me up too as well, because I'm like, things I cannot relate to.
No.
But I like the part where it's like all of us feel that our faith in humanity is the strongest when we're connected to the humans around us. And that, yeah, I'm such a big advocate for community, and I don't know, I think back on a lot of things I've experienced and like just those who surround me and like what that has been and like helped me through dark times and like celebrating times, you know, and yeah, so that's, I don't know, I really connected to that part of it, so.
Yeah, I connected to the line, it's a people who commit to a certain set of agreements. You know, I since I, you know, didn't know the original context the first time I read this on paper on our document, I was just thinking about just kind of the universality of that we all need communities, and it kind of, all communities are valid in their shapes and expressions and emergences. And one of those things that's beauty about meaningful and real community is that it is people who commit to a certain set of agreements to each other. And that's how the community doesn't exist unless there's an agreement to each other, right? Anything else is just like exchange, right? Like there's no community with this, you know, like all the vendors up and down the street. I mean, like there is a little bit, we actually do have one, but like, you know, that's just commerce. It's not the agreement that we're doing together.
Right.
But, yeah.
So let's, sorry, Jacob, didn't mean to cut you off.
I'm going to say what you're going to say, so you should say.
I was going to say, let's get into talking about Charlinda and the development of your community, shall we? Jacob, do you want to kick us off there in the first question?
Yeah, so Charlinda, like, tell us about where you went to college. We know you went to the University of Wisconsin-Stout, but why did you pick that college, or how did it pick you, or how did, you know, that emerge?
Yeah, so I originally actually went there for apparel design because they actually do, like, who'd have thought, but in Wisconsin, they have a really good apparel design program in the middle of nowhere. But yeah, so that's kind of what brought me there. I mean, growing up, art was just like always a part of my life. And my mom passed when I was 14, but she went to the University of Minnesota for art. And she definitely kind of led and held my hand throughout all that and bringing up my whole creativity, and also my dad as well, just like in different ways through like dance and taking me to shows and things like that and music. But anyway, so I originally applied for apparel design, and the fun fact about that is, and probably a lot of my friends don't know this about me, because I just don't think much of it until it kind of comes up, but like I kind of talked my way into college a little bit, but because I basically applied to a few schools or whatever, but Stout was definitely where I wanted to go, and I did not get accepted. And luckily I have an aunt who does not take no for an answer. So she drove me to Stout. It's an hour away from the city. And we went and talked to the dean, and, you know, they kind of did the typical thing, which is like, you know, well, we're so sorry, but like you should go to community college, and, you know, then perhaps you can transfer to the college and whatnot, like all that. And I just kind of remember being like, okay. And I had like my sketches with me, and my aunt just kind of goes, you know what? I think you two just need to talk one-on-one. I'm going to step out for a minute. And don't ask me what happened because I kind of do not remember. I just started showing her my art and talking about it. And eventually my aunt kind of stepped back into the room, and the woman looked at my aunt and said, you know, I really appreciate you guys coming out here. And I thought we were just going to get rejected again. But she goes, you know what? I think we can find a space for her. And so that was kind of like a really cool aspect of it.
That's awesome, mate.
Yeah.
Your aunt took you out and just had that intuition to step out of the room. And
yeah. And so I always credit my aunt for being the reason I got into college. But if you talk to her, she'll be like, I did nothing. You're the one, I left the room. So you're the one who actually was the one who pivoted that. But I mean, the fact she like even was kind of like, no, we're not taking no for an answer. I'm driving you out there. And like, I mean, I wouldn't have had that opportunity if she hadn't done that. So, but it was really great to have that support because my family's definitely an advocate for going to college because my grandpa was a professor. So going to college was a big deal for them. It's definitely a priority. And also with my dad too, like that was kind of his rule. Like you will go to college. This is not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Had your parents gone to college?
What?
Had your dad also gone to college?
No, not exactly. I think he like maybe did community college for a bit, but honestly, I don't think he did. Yeah, so it was kind of he pushed that a lot for his kids and stuff. Like he found education super important, so he always supported that. Definitely, I was not allowed to really like, you know, he was very strict on things in my life that he's like his only big ask was like graduate from college, then you can do whatever the heck you want.
Yeah.
So
apparel design is an interesting thing because not all schools have apparel designs. Not all state schools have it. I'm pretty sure the University of Texas, when I was there, did have it. And it was, I think it was in its own college, like the School of Textiles or Materials, and there weren't any other programs in it. But I know in some colleges or universities, it's more closely aligned with art programs or colleges of art and design. So like where was it in University of Wisconsin-Stout system?
Yeah, it was in our art building. So it was, you know, there's kind of sections within the art building to kind of keep it a little bit divided. But yeah, no, it was in the art building at least when I went there. So.
And so yeah. What motivated you you started out in apparel design and fashion design, and then you ended up switching to graphic design. How did you go from one to the other? And what made you realize that graphic design was the right place for you to be? Yeah.
So one of the things is like I kind of mentioned, my mom was the artist in like on her side of the family. Everyone else is like, does stuff with numbers, things I'm horrible at. So, I mean, and with her passing, I mean, everyone did the best they could, but I think their knowledge of art and what a career with art could look like. So all I knew was like apparel design, to be honest. I didn't even know graphic design was something you could major in or like what it was and that it could be a career. And so that's kind of why I went down the apparel design route, because also in high school I took a class. So I thought I was kind of interested. I don't know. I couldn't sew or anything. It was just the drawing aspect of it. That was all I really cared about. And I was in that program for like a year and a half before I kind of realized it wasn't right. But it kind of ended up being this like traumatic event that happened within my friend's life where I had to not be there for a class, and my professor's response was just so like hurtful, which was basically a very close friend of mine. Her and her boyfriend were in a car accident and her boyfriend didn't make it. So, and I went to the funeral. That's what I missed the class for, right? And her response to me was kind of like, people die every day. And I go, oh, okay. So if I'm getting this in college, there's no way, like, I was like, I refuse. Like, I can't see myself doing this in a, like, till retirement. And, like, nothing about what was happening in class was that serious that day, like, that I had to be there. It was just kind of one of those a time set aside where you could work on something and the professor's there, to be honest. So it wasn't even like a lecture I was missing. And it just kind of made me realize that it was really important for me to make sure then I was going to school for something that made me happy and that I felt I could, I don't know, it just had to be more positive. I was like, this can't be it. And to be honest, I also don't fully know how I figured out graphic design was an option. But I know another close friend of mine, she was going to, going to school for graphic design. And then when I kind of realized I wanted to do that and I went to talk to her about it, she goes, yeah, honestly, I don't know why. I was kind of surprised you didn't do that to start with. And I go, like, look what I'm dealing with these accountants over here. What did I, like, how was I supposed to know? And she's like, good point. But the second I remember just asking, what is graphic design? Because I just didn't know. And then this person just started pointing at everything. And like, I was like, oh, it's just kind of like when you go to a restaurant, that logo design, the menu, all that, or like if you go into a store, the signage and like the t-shirts, like that's all graphic design. So I also kind of realized, oh, I could kind of still be in the apparel world if I wanted, because that is also graphic designers, to be honest, like the prints that you see on t-shirts or band t-shirts, posters, all that, that's graphic design. And I was like, and it just kind of like opened up this whole world to me. And I was like, that sounds right.
What like sticks out to me in what you just shared, in addition to like the importance of community and have people to cheerlead for you, is that it like really strikes me that, you know, your professor in the apparel design program probably really thought that they were doing you a favor, right? That they were like setting you up for the real world, helping you understand what it is. But actually, like, that person had a choice, and they had a choice to like set up students to like recognize their own humanity, to shift the way that the field thought about its next generation of artists and of business leaders in fashion to be more humane, and to give people the option to see each other as fully human that can't be present all the time because we need to be part of our bigger community. And that professor like did what so many, you know, unfortunately, what happens in our K through 12 system of like not recognizing the humanity of students and the need for students to be part of a greater community that isn't just like career and school focused. But I love that your friend was there for you to also like shepherd you through the realization of like what else there was for you to do out there in ways that your family couldn't, just indicating that like our communities are so much bigger than just like, you know, the people that we're related to or in proximity to, that there's like a whole group of people we can draw on and learn from and who can help shepherd us to whatever that next experience is. And it sounds like it like changed your life to have that opportunity.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, kind of just to kind of go back to what you said about the professor, because I 100% agree. That was an opportunity for her to be a little bit different. But that professor particularly, she was like kind of known to be a hard ass, and like, but at the same time, she like worked in New York and she was like working for Calvin Klein, like some big brand name. So the fact that I was kind of getting it from her and realizing that she did have success, and like, I think she was trying to give me a little bit of reality check of what a career path could be like. She kind of did me a favor in a weird sense, because I would have probably stuck it out. But yeah, it was just so toxic. And I just recognizing that from the get-go. And there was, to me, that kind of was like, there is no community in apparel design, which nobody at me. Like, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's changed, and you know.
This is the Charlinda story of experiences.
Yeah,
That's how you experienced it.
But I was like, oh, so there's no support. There's no community. There's no, for something like that, like some traumatic event, and that's your response. That also says to me like how you are as a person. And if there's even another person like you, which I'm sure there is, like, I don't want anything to do with that field. So
the last company I worked for that fired me, which was a couple years back, I knew it was a red flag coming before that happened, when a really good friend of mine died by suicide. And I told the owner of the company, like, I need I was very much specifically saying the same thing. I need right now to not have to answer your calls. Like, I need today. There was not a funeral I could go to. This person was in a different state, yada, yada. And he just goes, and this person was not American, but he just goes, you know, I've noticed this about Americans. You guys hold on to the dead for so long. Like, that person died. It's over. And I was just like, man, you're trying, and I was doing sales. So it's like, if you want higher performance out of a person, it's not the way to get it.
Yeah.
But I feel that. I want to shift a bit, still in the kind of college mode. You've studied abroad multiple times. You've been out of the country. So, I mean, tell me about that. Like, how many times did you study abroad? When was that?
Literally some of the best moments of my life was studying abroad. So any kids watching this, do it if you're thinking about it. But yeah, so I studied abroad in Mexico. I went there for my minor in Spanish, but I sadly haven't quite kept up with it. But yeah, so I went to Mexico for a semester, and that was specifically to study Spanish. And then there was also another opportunity once I was in the graphic design program to do a year-long study abroad in Germany at HVK in Hildesheim. And that was such a great, crazy experience because all of our classes were in German. Do I know German? Well, I know it a little bit better now than I did before, but I mean, to just kind of do a realization, never heard it, never like learned it. And I think a month or two before I went, I took like a beginner course just so I could ask where the bathroom is and be able to read things in the grocery store to be like, where's the apples? I don't know, which is not too different. It's awful. So, but yeah, so that was such a fun, crazy, great experience. And just meeting people from all over, that was like another community moment that I kind of found and that I really truly like to maintain. But there was
so the community on the study abroad program was a diverse community. Was it like different Americans or was it really international?
It was really international. Yeah. Like, and with the Germany thing too, there was technically like two schools that people might be going to. One was just design and the other one was like language focused. But within like the design aspect, it was just super great. Like, I mean, I met a girl from Latvia, like beforehand. I don't even know if I knew that was a country, you know, and we, in the beginning too, I really love this about us, but we established kind of like a girls' night where we would cook dinner and just kind of talk. And yeah, and I had this like realization because it was like, me, my friend Tiffany, who's also mixed, and then it's like Alina from Latvia and Lola from Spain, and just multiple people just from all over. But we were all just so connected, and it was crazy because the way we interacted with each other was like we knew each other our whole entire lives. And there's just something super timeless about how we were able to just be with each other and our experiences, not just within art, but also in life. And just hearing each other's journeys of how we kind of like found our footsteps into art and just how we feel about art and where we wanted to go with it. It's just such a great experience. And I'm very grateful that I feel like I still communicate with a lot of them still to this day. And they're like constantly inspiring me. And yeah, so it's great because it doesn't just end in this moment of your life, but it's really just a unique experience to have. And some people will know what that feels like. And I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like, I've never regretted it. It's always been just something that I've looked back on that I'm like, makes me so happy. So,
yeah, I think there's something about bonding over the shared experience of not just learning in a classroom together, but like learning life together in a place that's unfamiliar to everyone that's in the group, and learning like having a shared experience of otherness in a particular context like that, I feel like really brings people together in a particular way. And you were studying design, so I can only imagine what that feels like from an artist perspective to like commune as artists together. How did these experiences influence your art? And what did you learn that you bring now to your design process?
Yeah, it was just kind of interesting to learn how other people kind of, how do I word it? It's kind of like we're more connected than we are different, I guess, is one of the things I learned. And so that definitely, I think, influences my art a lot, because a word I feel like I will continuously say is community. It's about like, it really helped me learn how to be a storyteller and be relatable, and knowing that even though my story is my own, it's not like I don't walk that story path alone. And just also it was kind of interesting. I mean, like one of the girls, I mean, it's like a language barrier too, right? Or, but we were still able to communicate with each other. And that spoke to me a lot as well, because it's like about body language. So like dancing is another great example, kind of just like being able to understand someone through their hands, as I now start using my hands more. I'm Italian now.
We're like old Jews. Jacob and I just like gesticulate all the time with our hands, so we get it.
I'm working really hard to not use my hands so much.
Actively sitting on your hands right now. But yeah, I just think that I just don't prior, what I have thought that my life or experience, or like what I relate in any capacity to someone who grew up in like a completely different language, a different climate, and like, it's not, I feel like I learned that I'm more similar than different from people, and it comforted me a lot. And I kind of took that with me, especially, like I've said, with my art, because I feel like a lot of what I do, I kind of try to provide storytelling of like including, making people feel included, or just kind of trying to build a community. So.
Yeah, and I want to shift a little bit on that building community, because I think it relates to the next part of your journey. So one of the things that I've learned from you and our group of friends is actually this like carrying community with you. For those of you who don't know, Charlinda is part of a lady crew that existed in New York City. This is how Charlinda and I met. And I got to become a part of that lady crew. But this lady crew for you actually like has been around since you were kids. And you moved to New York, where pieces of this lady crew were. So tell us about what motivated you after college to move to New York, because you didn't go there immediately. And I recall there being some little bumps in the road. So tell us about what that process of getting from Minnesota to New York was like, and what inspired you to do that.
Yeah. Basically, one day I took my crazy pills. No,
That's how I feel too about moving to New York.
I think
y'all are crazy for doing it. Absolutely, like it's one of those things. Why, if you don't live in a city with tens of millions of people, would you all of a sudden want to do that? But then also, that's the thing to do. So like, badass, and kudos to anyone who ever does that. Even if you know no one, if you know two people, if like your best friend and sister live there, it doesn't matter. It's like a huge thing, and I always admire people who do that. Yeah,
a lot of people kind of thought I was crazy or were very shocked by this. But I kind of was in this space where it'd been a year after I had graduated, and I was still at this job where I worked at the Guthrie Theater, and I'd been there pretty much the majority of my life. And that's a whole other story of like what that place means to me. But once again, strong community, which is why I stuck there or stayed there for so long. But I kind of just got to this point where I'm like, hey girl, you went to college. Maybe you should use that degree. And I was trying to figure out where or what that meant and how I could go about it. And I just realized that there wasn't enough motivation or like enough push for me to do that in Minnesota. I just felt like there was safety nets for me to fall back on, and if it didn't work out, and I needed more than that. So I did the next crazy thing, which was like move to New York. But I mean, it was mainly this big discussion that I had with fast forward, she ended up being my roommate. But my friend Steph, she worked with me at this theater, and it was probably the first conversation we really ever had, like, because we were assigned to be in the same space. So I kind of talked to her because she had moved to New York and all this. And I kind of, asked her what that experience was like and what she felt about it. And she was just kind of like, well, 1,000%, I think you should move to New York if it's even a slight thought in your head, but also just apply wherever and see where the chips may fall, just do it and see what happens. And so I applied everywhere, but New York was the main one that I heard back from the most. And I get to interview stages, but then it was kind of like the second they realized I wasn't in New York yet, I felt like that kind of, they're like, oh, she's not that serious, or I don't know what they thought, but basically never heard back after that. So then I kind of realized, oh, the next thing I need to do is just move out there. And yeah, like you guys were saying, it kind of just takes knowing maybe one or two people. And so like, I have these friends that I've known since the second grade that live out there, but it was actually their friend KJ who I crashed with for like a few weeks actually when I first got there. And me and KJ had met once or twice. Like, first of all, we both went to the same high school and all that. So like I knew of her, but we weren't necessarily friends. She was like a grade younger and our circles didn't quite like intertwine. But I really got to kind of know her when I went to go visit them in New York once. And so she honestly was like acquaintance, but I don't know. She's also from Minnesota. So it's like Minnesotans, we like find each other, we like hold each other up and all that. But yeah, so I just kind of took this big leap of faith, packed a suitcase and went. And I do remember Alicia saying something to me at the very beginning after I kind of like got more settled in, figured my like living situation and got my jobs. She was just kind of like, you really live your life like you want something from it. And I think that's very admirable. And like, it's something that always like felt very special because for those who know Alicia, like she works so hard, and for her to kind of like recognize that in me was like really nice of her to say that to me. But
yeah, what I think is like so important about that is what New York gave to me, and what I found in each of you was a group of like really inspiring badass women who were all in this crazy city and we're all hustling so hard. A friend of mine once said everyone in New York just has a few less spoons, but like the spoons that we all have were really there to support each other in our career aspirations, and in that group to like see us become strong women that were taking over the world together. So you got to New York and you got these jobs. Yeah, Dulce, Lady Crew. This is what support looks like. Manifest right here. So you started freelancing as a creative in New York. I have never done that. Can you share with us what freelancing is like? Is it easier or harder in New York to find work as a creative? Like, what does that relationship look like? What's the freelance experience?
Yeah. I hate it. But there's also
I really feel here.
I just think there's different sides of it too, because like there's freelancing where you're working for yourself, and I think some people really love that and thrive from that. I do not. There's also freelancing for other people where basically it means you're full-time employed, but you don't get any benefits or consistent salary because you're just hourly. I'm not a fan of that either. But that's kind of more often than not the hand that we're dealt in the creative world. So yeah, so there's that. But I think, like, once again, this is my personal story or like my feelings towards it. But yeah, I think that freelancing can be a challenge, and I'm kind of actively working not to be in that boat. But, or if I am, then what does that future hold for me? Because if I can then be a little bit more in control of the narrative, then maybe I can find comfort in some of that aspect. But I don't know. It's a struggle because it's like 1 month, you're making this amount, the next month, maybe not. And once again, how I even talked about my family, I'm like, they do numbers. Like, I don't do math. Like, I did not get that gene at all. Like, my grandpa was a professor in accounting, and I just don't make me do these things. And so, I don't know, it's, when you're a freelancer, you're kind of your HR, your accountant, your project manager, and doing all these things. And some of it's fine, but it's hard
harder?
when your energy wants to be just focused on the art, and it can't be. So
Is it harder or easier to be a freelancer as a creative in a city like New York that's so big?
yeah, I honestly, yes, I do think it's easier for a few things. Like, if you're just getting started, I think it's great because there's so many job experiences. And at least for me, how I looked at it is, it's not that I was going to take anything, but like, there's such a variety of things or options out there. So if you just want to try to get experience in different variety of things, it's perfect. But as you kind of like put your time in, I think gets a little bit more challenging, because then you can be picky, I think. But still, at the end of the day, there's plenty of options compared to like other cities. But yeah, that's another reason why I kind of chose New York, or more so I kind of feel like New York chose me, because I was hearing back, but I was just constantly in interviews nonstop, and I've not really experienced that anywhere else. So
Like anywhere else being like where you're at now in Portland, it's not the same.
yeah, there's that. And even before I went to New York, when I was saying how I just applied everywhere, even in Minnesota, but like Chicago, I think I even applied in Canada, like in Germany actually as well. And New York was the only place that I really heard back from. So
I want to ask you a bit about the kind of the shape of this setup, where you talked about the two different freelancing situations, one where you're just completely working for yourself, searching for gigs, and another one where you're not exactly an employee, you're a contractor. You're there, you can't expect work, but you can't necessarily expect consistent cash flow. And I wanted to ask you about that, because you have a lot of experience there with agencies who have their own clients, as well as in the creative department or of a larger corporation that has a bunch of creatives on as contractors. So I just wanted to hear kind of your thoughts on, I mean, you already shared how it sucked and you want to get out of it, but like just that shape, because that is an important part of the workforce. There's a lot of people there. You spent a lot of time in that world and saw it from a couple different dimensions.
yeah, yeah, it's kind of a little crazy to me that there are corporations that definitely have the money and resources to bring on creatives full time and don't. I've talked to one of my former roommates about it, because she also worked at the same corporate spot, but she was in marketing, and marketing people are safe, so like they're all salary and get all the benefits. But then creative people, it was just like maybe 5 people on my hands that I could count that actually were able to do that, and it's really hard too, and discouraging, because I would see people that had put in the years and work their way up and get these higher titles, and they were still just contractors. Like,
Jeez.
I don't understand what the thought process is behind that, especially because there's like, in that aspect, you're being hired through a recruiter agency, and so that corporate place is giving that recruiter agency a set amount, but then the creative designer only sees a certain percentage of it. And so not only are they spending more money to keep you on, and it's just, but then it's like you're not also providing that creative with benefits. So, so instead of like, it's like clearly the money is there, but the designer's only seeing like a portion of it, versus you just like bringing on that designer full time and giving them a fair salary. And like, you probably would be spending the exact same, if not less, actually. And I just don't understand in what world that makes sense, except for, I don't know.
Do you think
that kind of goes down another path where I don't think that creatives are respected enough?
That's what I was going to say. That only makes sense in a world where you don't respect those people.
Yeah.
you know, maybe you respect them when you're talking to them, but like, and show respect, but it's like, you don't respect the fact that this person wants to give you the best of their work in exchange for the money they deserve for that time.
Yeah.
Right. Did that have any impact on how you felt they valued the art that you were creating? Like, do you feel like if you would have been like a permanent part of an organization, that they would have had more respect for the artistic process and what it took to create, you know, the assets that you were essentially creating for them?
Yeah, like, I think it's something that I just talking with coworkers or friends about. It's like, we do struggle with that, of knowing that the respect isn't really there. And how can you still put your best foot forward? Because at the end of the day, at least this is how I feel, like, I want a project to be successful too. I like, you know, if something's not working, it's not working. I'm happy to pivot into a different direction, all that stuff. But it's just like, being on some kind of like equal understanding, or like feeling like you are of importance, of value, like, that's important. For it motivates the artist and the person just to even more so want to like give you more than just their best, like, if that makes sense. And even though this doesn't quite have to do with art, but it has to do with sales. But one of my roommates, she kind of talked about this, where it's like a company that she had worked for prior, just the leadership was not there, of like, if someone did something good, or even if they didn't do something good, but like how to like pull someone up and like keep encouraging them to do better, like that motivation. And it's, I don't know, I think, that's something that lacks, maybe not just in art, but other areas too, but to really know how to bring the best out of your employees, I guess, is kind of, and that's by feeling supported and respected. So I think there's a lot of companies or places that are missing out on some amazing things due to the way that they treat their employees.
One thing I feel like it sounded like you were saying is that, in a way, like, the creative and the artist wants to be generous with like their commitment to that organization or to the production of their art, and they're not getting the reciprocation on that. But it really sounded, a lot of what you're saying is like, you want to be generous with that.
Yeah, like, it's just kind of like, I will happily burn the midnight oil, or like, I will go out of my way to figure something out, even more so, like, and put extra time into something if I feel like my time is being respected, but also my views are being, like, my outlook on things and being heard, or anything like that. One of the things I kind of heard was like, well, is this the hill you want to die on? Like, which I was just kind of like, really? And in some ways, like, a few years as that's marinated in my head, like, I do understand certain aspects of it, but it is also very kind of heartless, in my opinion, because if it were up to an artist, yeah, it's like, we would die on every hill. At least that's how I think. And even if it's something that's maybe not that big of a deal, but.
Yeah. I really relate to that, of the question of like, is this the battle you really want to fight? Is this where you want to use your energy? Because energy that you're using for other people isn't necessarily energy you're using for yourself. I want to pivot in the last few minutes to talking about all things #BlackGirlMagic, because that, to me, is so much a part of your work and what I've learned from you over the years. So I know that you are mixed race. I believe your dad was Black and your mom was white, and that has been very much like a part of your identity and your creation process. And so I just want to pull out a quote from something that you wrote, and I know you don't consider yourself a writer, but I think it was actually a beautiful article, and I hope everyone goes to Eco-Friendly. It's linked with the show, and reads it. But you were talking about 2020 and seeing 2024, 2020 and what it is. And you said, but this is not the work of a moment. This is the crossroads between learning from our histories and making a change to shape a world that values equality and each other, or dooming ourselves to repeat and remain static. And I feel like I see that in your work so much. Yeah, Jacob's snapping. Everyone around the world is snapping.
I'm sorry I didn't make a graphic like for the Toni Morrison quote, because that is some like ground shaking words right there, Charlinda.
Well, we'll make it and we'll post it on our social media and tag you. By we, I mean Jacob. I can't make anything. How is your identity as a mixed race person continuing to influence your work at this moment in time?
Ooh-wee. Yeah, I mean, I don't even know where to begin, honestly. Like,
where it feels most comfortable.
It's interesting because, like, I grew up in Minnesota, and my mom's side of the family, so the white side of me, is more the people I grew up with. But I was also so inspired by like my dad's side of the family, and more so like his sister, my Aunt Jackie. It was just like, this woman does everything and nothing holds her back. And I'm trying actually not to cry because I just like, she's like, how do I explain it? She like takes in kids that are not hers, you know, like she's also, I can't remember how old she was, but I'm just going to throw out a number, but I'm pretty sure she was like in her 60s when she went back to college, and like, you know what I mean? Like, and then she also got cancer at the same time as my dad. And like, I don't know. So she's like a cancer survivor. I don't know. She's just so incredible. And I've always been, I don't know how to express it, but like, she's like a huge role model, or like, just also kind of seeing that in other women of color in my life and how hard they work or how hard they push for things. And I can feel very small in that. But I mean, at the end of the day, all we can do is like try, I guess. So I just see so much magic in her and all my friends, and how, and it's like I said, like, you know, it's not her doing things for herself or for her own. It's like she's also bringing people with her, like, you know, taking care of kids that are not hers, like stepping up, and no one asked her to, but like stepping up, you know what I mean? Like, there's just something so admirable about that. And I think that's what a lot of people kind of saw with the things that were going on in 2020, is like stepping up without having to be asked. Like, I feel like certain things shouldn't have to be asked to step up.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah. And this woman's been doing it all her life. And yeah, so I don't know.
Yeah. I want to shout you out for crying. This is totally a safe space to cry. As everyone here knows, I cry for literally everything all the time. So crying, absolutely acceptable.
Yeah.
I love the example you just gave of your aunt, because what I hear from you and I hear in your work, you did this beautiful piece for the Guthrie Theater, which is very close to your heart, for the musical Caroline or Change. And it says, for change come fast and change come slow, but everything changes. And I think about that in terms of like calling out for you, the like women in your life, particularly the women of color who have done so much to like model for you and for their communities of what strength is and what leadership is, and how they are the change that we need. And they lean into that even at moments when, from what I hear in the other piece you wrote, that like some people aren't leaning into that change. And yet you guys step up, the role models in your life step up and they lean harder into it and they do it. Which is something that I learned. I'm going to cry now too. We're all going to cry. It's something that I learned from you all the time. And I see it in your work. And so that really comes through for me, is a reflection that I have here.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw that show for the first time at the Guthrie, and I saw it a bazillion times, as much as I could. I was like, I don't know. Because we kind of get some free tickets when you're an employee, but I was also sitting in rush to like see it even more. But yeah, that whole phrase, I don't know how old I was when that happened, but I was maybe 19, I don't know, 19 or something, I think, when I saw it. But it's a phrase that has just like really stuck with me. Because throughout my life, it's kind of like whether I'm ready or not, change is kind of happening. So it's like, where am I going to fall on that side? Like, am I going to be a part of the change, or, whether it's, I don't know. It's just, and there's so many ways in different aspects of my life that is relatable and how I feel about things. Like,
yeah.
Yeah. If that makes sense.
So some more change is going to come at you fast.
Yeah.
We've hit the hour mark, so we're going to move into rapid fire.
Oh God.
So playlist. You're making a playlist, Charlinda. What's the top 3 tracks on it?
Ooh, okay. So I'm Here with Cynthia Erivo singing. I've listened to that song a whole workday straight in a row. Soulmate, Lizzo. Love Lizzo. I love that song specifically. It's like my getting ready in the morning to motivate me, or if I'm not feeling like I'm doing well, it will put me right. And then Have Mercy, Aaron Allen Kane, that song. Ooh, light some candles. It's like a meditating, I don't know. It just like, or if you're just driving, it's like the perfect song to listen to. And I mean, everyone stop what you're doing and listen to it right now. But yeah.
Love it. What's something that you're reading right now, or something that you've read in the past that has really inspired you?
So I'm not the best reader. That's always been the struggle for me, but I kind of always bring up the fact that the one book I actually read throughout my middle school and high school thing fully was Catcher in the Rye. And yeah, and the part, or the reason why I connected to that was because of how he talks about the dream he has, and like how there's these children playing in the field and there's like a cliff, and like he's trying to catch them before they go off the cliff and all that and stuff. And the cliff, though, it has to do with adulthood. And something about it when reading it as a kid, and it's kind of like, it was about like the innocence or like the playfulness as you have as a kid, and then kind of like there's a moment in your life where like you kind of lose it, and so he's trying to keep this alive for the kids. And like that just spoke to me, and it's something that I kind of carry with me, is like I don't ever want to lose my inner child or my playfulness. I don't want to go too far off the edge where I lose myself completely.
Love it.
What's a mantra that has guided you through your journey, or that you think would be valuable to anyone else taking a similar journey?
Yeah, there's kind of 2 that are very similar. One was, I got it as a gift for my senior show from a friend, and it was like a magnet. It was before actually our show happened, but so it kind of was like my little mantra to get me through that stressful time. But it said, it's not okay. It's not the end. Like if it's not okay, it's not the end. And then something that my cousin told me when my mom died, because she had also kind of lost her mom at a fairly young age, maybe not as young as me, but she just kind of goes, baby girl, you're going to have your good days and your bad days. It's just important to know during your bad days, a good day is going to come. And so that's something that honestly definitely sticks with me.
I love this.
Knowing, it's hard because sometimes we all get in those moments where we don't know how we're going to get, like we think we don't know how we're going to get out of it, this darkness that we're in. But I kind of just try to breathe and be like, no, a good day's coming. Like this isn't, all hope is not lost.
Guys, that is the end of Rapid Fire. This is the end of our show. To our fabulous community, thank you for joining us. Thank you times a million to Charlinda for her vulnerability and her bravery and her art and sharing her story with us today. It always inspires me. I hope it inspired you. I know it inspired Jacob. Thanks to everyone for watching. Charlinda's plugs. Go to charlindabrewster.com. Go see her art on draw.linda on Instagram, and go read her article on Eco-Friendly. And we've posted it with the show. I'll recirculate it again. about feeling, fighting, and dismantling racism at this time. Be inspired to act, please. Next week, our guest is going to be Errol Saunders. Errol has a BA in political science from Yale, a master, an MEd in curriculum and teaching from Teachers College, Columbia University, and he's on his way to a PhD in curriculum and teaching. He's also been a teacher, a doctoral fellow, and now he is executive director of the Pathfinder program at the Hopkins School. So he's going to be talking to us about his journey as an educator and the youth of today, holding on to the youth from Charlinda's message on Catching the Rye. Jacob, where can our guests continue to find us?
As always, you can find us on the internet. We are on facebook.com/Liberal Arts MBA. You can look up Liberal Arts MBA on YouTube. And when you're there, please subscribe to the channel. Once we hit 100 subscribers, we can get our slugs to be youtube.com/Liberal Arts MBA. And on top of that, you can also see us on either my profile or Sarah's profile on LinkedIn. We have a LinkedIn page for Liberal Arts MBA. Please follow it. And you can also find us on Twitter and on Instagram. So follow us on that gram, y'all. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Charlinda, for being our guest today.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. I survived. I'm not canceled, right?
Guys, we have been your masters of artful ceremony, taking you through the process, heavy-handedly, big brush strokes, going through the heart and soul of it all. We will see you same time, same place next week. Thanks, everyone.